Before we get into long division or algebraic long division, we're going to start looking back at the numbers. So if we wanted to divide 90,662 by 22, we take the first two numbers 90 and say, right, does 22 go into that? And the answer is yes, it goes in 4 times. But then we want to find what the remainder is. So you do 4 times 22, gives you 88, and then you subtract to find the remainder. So that gives us a remainder of 2. Then what we do is we bring the next one down, because we know we've got 2 digits, and we start again. So we say, right, does 2 go into 26, which it does once. And then to find the remainder, you do 1 times 22, and then you subtract to find that remainder, which is 4. Again, bring the next number down, and then you say, does 22 go into 46? The answer is yes, twice. Then to find the remainder, 2 times 22 is 44. Subtract, and that tells us it's 44 with a remainder of 2. Finally, bring the last number down, and you say, does 22 go into 22? The answer is yes, that's once. 1 times 22 is 22. If you subtract, that gives you a remainder of 0. So what that tells me is the quotient. The quotient is the number after you've done the division. So the quotient is 4121. The remainder is 0. So 22 is a factor of 90,662. So let's look at a different number. We'll make it a slightly easier one. If we divide by 9 and say we've got 8137, for example. So 9 doesn't go into 8. So look at the next two numbers. Does 9 go into 81? Yes, it goes in there 9 times. 9 times 9 is 81. If we subtract that, we get 0. That means there's no remainder. So now we have to bring the 3 down, but 9 goes into 3 0 times, with a remainder of 3. So then we bring the next one down, and 9 goes into 37 4 times. Then 4 times 9 is 36, and when we subtract, we get a remainder of 1. So what that means is the quotient is 904. But 9 is not a factor because the remainder isn't 0. So the remainder equals 1. So it's not a factor. So now if we look at this sort of thing in algebraic terms, let's look at the expression x squared minus 2x minus 24. To solve this, we first need to find factors. Okay. Now we're used to finding factors of quadratics, and in this case, this is something we can factorize, and it's going to be minus 6 plus 4. So the factors are going to be x minus 6 and x plus 4. And by setting each factor equal to 0, we can come up with the solutions. So if x minus 6 is equal to 0, then x equals 6. And if x plus 4 is equal to 0, then x equals negative 4. So these are the solutions. Easy enough when we've got a quadratic to find that, but when we have something a little bit more complicated, for example 2x cubed minus x squared minus 13x minus 6, we first need to find a factor, and we know a factor is when we get a remainder of 0. The way to find a remainder is, say we wanted to divide by x minus 1. if we're saying x minus 1 may or may not be a factor, then the solution would be x equals 1. So to see if there's a remainder, you substitute x equals 1 into the original equation. So 2 times 1 cubed minus 1 squared. So every time there was an x, we replace it with 1. And we work out what we get. So we're going to get 2 minus 1 minus 13 minus 6. So that's going to be minus 2 minus 20. So that's going to give you negative 18. What that negative 18 means is that is the remainder when the original expression is divided by x minus 1. Because it has a remainder that's not 0, we know that x minus 1 is not a factor. But let's see, what if we tried x plus 2, for example? If we think x plus 2 might be a factor, then we're going to substitute in x equals negative 2. So if we go back to the original expression, 2 times negative 2 cubed minus negative 2 squared. Just make sure you're using the brackets. And if we evaluate that, negative 2 cubed is negative 8, so 2 times negative 8 is negative 16, minus, now negative 2 squared is 4, negative 13 times negative 2 is positive 26, and minus 6. Minus 16 minus 4 is minus 20. Minus 20 plus 26 is 6. 6 minus 6 equals 0. So because the remainder is 0, what that means is x plus 2 is a factor. And we can use this factor in the next lesson to actually factorize and then solve this. Another type of question they could ask about using either factors or remainders is something along these lines, where it says, given that x minus 3 is a factor of the function 6x cubed minus 13x squared minus kx plus 12, use this fact to find k. Now, because we know it's a factor, what that means is the remainder equals 0. And we're going to use that fact to find k. So if x minus 3 is a factor, then we're going to substitute in x equals 3. And we know we should get 0 because it's a factor. So 6 times 3 cubed minus 13 times 3 squared minus k times 3 plus 12 should give us 0. So 6 times 3 cubed is 27, 6 times 27 is 162, minus 13 times 3 squared, 13 times 9 is 117, minus 3k plus 12 equals 0. So let's simplify before we start changing sides. 162 minus 117 plus 12 gives you 57, minus 3k equals 0. So 57 equals 3k, so k equals 19. The last type of question you could get is if x squared minus 4 is a factor of 2x cubed minus ax squared plus bx plus 4, find a and b. Now if x squared minus 4 is a factor, because we can factorize x squared minus 4 to x minus 2 times x plus 2 using difference of two squares, then we know that x minus 2 is a factor, in which case we can substitute in x equals 2 and you'll get 0. and x plus 2 is a factor, in which case we can substitute in x equals negative 2 and get 0. So if we start with x equals 2, then we're going to have 2 times 2 cubed minus a times 2 squared plus b times 2 plus 4 equals 0. 2 cubed is 8, so that's 16 minus 4a plus 2b plus 4 equals 0. So 20 is equal to 4a minus 2b, and we're going to call that equation 1. So I put the constant on one side and the a's and b's on the other. Now, if we use x equals negative 2, 2 times negative 2 cubed minus a times negative 2 squared plus b times negative 2 plus 4 equals 0. So negative 16 minus 4a minus 2b plus 4 equals 0. So here, negative 16 plus 4 is negative 12 is equal to 4a plus 2b, and we'll call that equation 2. Now we can see here we've now got 2 equations and 2 unknowns, which we can solve using simultaneous equations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take equation 1 and I'm going to add equation 2. So 20 plus negative 12 gives you 8. 4a plus 4a is 8a. Minus 2b plus 2b cancels out, becomes 0. So from this we know a is equal to 1. And if we substitute into equation 1, we know that 20 is equal to 4 times 1, which is 4 minus 2b. So 16 equals negative 2b, so b is equal to negative 8. So in this case we use both factors, form 2 simultaneous equations, and then solve.